The baby smiled when the cloth touched his eyelid. Not a wide smile, just the kind that escapes before a miracle knows it's happening. Under the warm window light of a Rhode Island mansion, Monica Whitmore, the new nanny of 30 years old, dabbed a small towel over little Noah Crawford's lashes. And the infant turned his face toward the light, as if the sun had just called his name. It shouldn't have been possible. Noah had been born blind, or so everyone said. Doctors, reports. A diagnosis repeated like a prayer made of fear. For 6 months, his world had been shadows and silence. Yet here he was, reacting to brightness through closed eyes, chasing warmth with a laugh so round and pure, it made every clock in the room forget to tick. From the doorway, Elliot Crawford, 40 and carrying the tired weight of a new widower's grief, froze in his sharp blue suit. His hand flattened against the doorframe. The billionaire who could buy any answer suddenly had none. He watched Monica tilt the small towel, watched the baby's chin lift, watched the kind of tenderness he couldn't purchase bloom between them like a secret garden. The mansion on Ocean Drive had hosted governors and opera singers, but it had never seen this, a moment as fragile as soap bubbles, as loud as truth-breaking. Monica didn't look like a miracle worker, just a woman with steady hands and a steady heart, the sort that older women in the neighborhood church would call good stock, the sort that knows lullabies from memory and prayers by muscle. "Hey, little sailor," Monica whispered, her voice carrying that calm mid-Atlantic softness, a hint of Boston vowels from childhood summers. "Do you feel that, honey? Is it bright?" Noah made a sound, half giggle, half sigh, and turned again toward the window. Golden afternoon poured over the crib, a sweep of Newport light kissing his cheek. Elliot's breath hitched. He had begged specialists in Manhattan and Boston, flown to Houston for one more opinion, signed papers with numbers that would feed small towns. Yet the first sign of hope had come from a woman wearing yellow cleaning gloves and faith in her pocket. People in wealthy towns talk about miracles as if they're consultants, useful, expensive, scheduled by appointment. But women above 50, the ones who've buried rings and loved ones and still get up, they know miracles are humble. A child turning his head to light, a stranger walking into your house with gentleness that can't be taught. Monica felt it, the tremor in the air when impossible things are about to name themselves. She kept her movements grounded, mother plain. No drama, no gasps, just a measured rhythm. Warm cloth, soft voice, patient pause. She'd seen too many anxious parents flood the room with fear and drown a good moment, so she let the moment breathe. Elliot tried to speak and found his voice somewhere far behind loss. He moved, he said, as if confessing a sin and a hope in the same sentence. Monica glanced back only long enough to meet his eyes. "He's tracking warmth," she said gently. "Maybe more than warmth." Then to Noah, "There you go, Captain. Follow the sunshine." The house seemed to lean in. Even the Atlantic wind paused at the terrace doors. The portraits of stiff ancestors on the wall, men who built railroads and women who hid their softness in pearls, watched as the smallest Crawford chased, a beam of light like a ship finding its lighthouse, and in that pause questions rushed in. What if the diagnosis was wrong? What if grief had made Elliot accept an answer too quickly? What if someone trusted wanted it that way? A whisper of scandal tugged at the edges of the room. Elliot's sister had insisted on a certain doctor. The previous nanny, dismissed quietly, had warned that the baby didn't like light. The hospital billed for tests Elliot never read. Wealth creates two kinds of shadows, the ones that hide pain and the ones that hide people. Monica didn't know all of that yet. She only knew the feel of truth when it brushed her palm. She knew the old churchwoman saying, "If God means to open a door, he'll let you hear the hinge. Right now," Noah's laugh was the hinge. She hummed a tune she learned from her grandmother in Maryland, a kitchen song about mercy and mourning. In a world of specialists and schedules, a simple lullaby sometimes opens what fear locks. Noah grew still, then turned again to the brightness, mouth open in wonder. The gold flooded his face. Monica's own eyes filled, not the loud cry of drama, but the quiet water of recognition. Something here is not what we've been told. Elliot stepped closer, every inch of his polished life clattering to the floor, invisible but loud. He remembered the nurse who didn't meet his eyes the day of the diagnosis. He remembered the envelope his late wife had left, still sealed in the drawer he couldn't bear to open. He remembered how easy it is for a lonely man to sign away his questions. Outside, the ocean kept its slow prayer. Inside, a woman with work-worn grace and a baby with soap on his shoulders changed the weather of a house. Maybe Noah wasn't blind. Maybe someone needed him to be. This story isn't about money. It is about courage. The courage to look again at what hurt told you was finished. It is about women who know that tenderness is not weakness, and about men who learn, too late or just in time, that salvation often arrives in a blue uniform with sleeves rolled up. It is about a truth hidden in plain sight, and a nanny who dared to notice. I'm John Parker, and today's story will touch your heart. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give your like. It's very important to me, and leave in the comments which city or country you are listening to me from. Elliot Crawford had always believed money could solve everything: grief, uncertainty, even blindness. But that afternoon, standing frozen by the doorway of his own home, he began to doubt it. Monica Whitmore wasn't a woman of science or wealth. She was warmth wrapped in humility, and her hands held a kind of knowing that didn't come from books or degrees. Later that day, when the mansion fell silent again, Elliot found himself staring at Noah's baby monitor long after bedtime. The faint sound of Monica's lullaby, soft, southern and old-fashioned, drifted through the speaker. It calmed the boy. It calmed him. He didn't want to admit it, but he trusted that voice more than the entire medical board that had taken his money and left him with fear. Monica had only been there for 3 days. Hired through an agency that handled domestic staff for families who preferred discretion, she'd come with modest references and a confidence Elliot couldn't quite place. Her resume listed early childhood education, basic nursing, and experience with special needs infants. But there was something unspoken beneath her tone, something that made her more present than anyone else who had passed through that house since his wife died. At breakfast the next morning, Monica served Noah his bottle near the kitchen window. The light hit his face again and he cooed, turning instinctively toward it. Elliot saw it with his own eyes this time. No coincidence. No wishful thinking. Real movement. He dropped his newspaper and stood. "Monica, did you see that?" he asked, voice sharp with restrained emotion. She smiled softly, never losing her calm. "I did, sir." "He's following brightness. I noticed it again this morning." He ran a hand through his hair, disbelief folding into confusion. "But that's not possible. Dr. Avery said—" "Doctors are wonderful," Monica interrupted gently, "but they can't see what they don't believe in." Her words struck something deep. Elliot had built his empire on logic and control, but there was no spreadsheet for faith, no formula for a moment that defied explanation. When she saw his expression falter, Monica added, "I'm not saying the doctor was wrong, sir. Just that maybe Noah's story isn't finished yet." That line stayed with him all day. Maybe Noah's story isn't finished yet. It sounded less like hope and more like a challenge. As hours passed, Elliot found himself observing Monica more closely. She moved through the house with quiet precision, humming little tunes from another time, the kind his grandmother once sang in Georgia summers. There was something oddly healing in her presence. Even the staff, housekeeper Martha and gardener Lewis, started smiling more when she was around. By mid-afternoon, Monica was in the nursery again, experimenting with gentle lights and textures. "You like this one, don't you, Captain?" she said to Noah, holding up a soft yellow rattle that caught the sunlight. The baby laughed, a bright bubbling sound that filled the air. Elliot entered quietly, watching from the door. For a moment he saw something else, Monica blinking hard as though fighting back tears. Her lips trembled with the kind of empathy that can't be faked. "You care for him like he's your own," he said softly. She didn't turn around. "Every child I care for becomes a part of me," she whispered. "But this one feels different." "How so?" Monica hesitated, then looked over her shoulder. "Because I think he's trying to tell us something." Elliot's brows furrowed. "Tell us?" "Yes," she said. "Babies can't speak, but they respond. And sometimes they respond to what's hidden." Her eyes drifted to Noah. "This little one reacts to warmth, to voices, to touch, but the way he follows light, it's like his eyes are remembering something." Her words were strange, poetic, and yet undeniably sincere. Elliot walked closer, lowering his voice. "You sound like you've seen this before. Monica hesitated, then whispered, "I have." For a heartbeat, their gazes locked. Elliot caught the flicker of pain behind her green eyes, the kind born from experience, not imagination. But before he could ask more, the doorbell rang. Loud, sharp, jarring. It was Vivian Crawford, his sister, arriving unannounced as usual. She swept into the living room like a gust of cold wind, silk scarf trailing, perfume announcing her presence before her words did. "Elliot, I just got back from the charity luncheon. And who, pray tell, is this?" Her eyes landed on Monica with the quick assessment of someone trained to divide the world into our kind and help. "Miss Whitmore," Elliot said curtly. "Noah's nanny." Vivian's smile was thin and precise. "Of course she is. I suppose the last one wasn't. Satisfactory?" Monica stood straight, polite but firm. "I'm still learning what Noah needs, ma'am." Vivian's glance flicked to the baby. "He doesn't need much anymore, does he?" Then, almost casually, "I still think you're wasting time chasing miracles." Elliot's jaw tightened. "He's my son, Vivian," she sighed dramatically. "And I'm your sister, the one who's been managing your company while you hide in this house. You can't keep living inside this tragedy." Monica turned away, giving them privacy, but not before she noticed something. The way Vivian's tone turned sharp whenever she mentioned the baby. There was something personal in her disapproval, something beyond impatience. That night, when the house finally quieted, Monica stood by Noah's crib, whispering a prayer under her breath. "Lord, whatever this truth is, let it come to light." From the hallway, Elliot watched her silently, wondering not for the first time who she really was and what she had seen before that made her so sure miracles weren't just stories. He didn't know that Monica's calm came from her own secret, a tragedy she had buried years ago in another house, with another child who had also been declared blind, and this time, she wasn't going to let the truth stay hidden. That night, Elliot couldn't sleep. The rhythmic hum of the ocean outside his mansion blended with the faint crackle of the fireplace downstairs. His thoughts kept returning to Monica's words. Sometimes they respond to what's hidden. He sat in his study, staring at the baby monitor, at the small screen that glowed with the image of Noah sleeping peacefully. The world had told him his son was blind, but Monica's touch, her certainty, had stirred something inside him he hadn't felt in months. Hope. He reached for the drawer on his right. Inside lay an envelope, yellowed at the edges, sealed with a small blue ribbon. His late wife Claire had left it before she passed away, labeled in her delicate handwriting, "For when you start to doubt." He had never opened it. He couldn't. Until now, with trembling hands, he broke the seal. Inside was a single letter, written in blue ink, and a smaller note attached from Dr. Samuel Avery, the same doctor who had declared Noah blind. Claire's letter was brief, almost too calm. "Elliot, if you're reading this, it means something doesn't make sense anymore. Please don't let the people around you convince you to stop looking for answers. You've always been too trusting, even with those who smile too easily. Protect Noah. Trust your instinct, and when you can't, trust the light." He stared at those last words, feeling his heart pound. He turned to the doctor's note next, an invoice dated the week after Claire's death, charging an obscene amount for postnatal neurological procedures. His throat tightened. None of this had ever been discussed with him. Something wasn't right. But why would a doctor falsify his son's diagnosis? The next morning, Monica arrived early, her hair still damp from the sea breeze. She moved through the house as if she had always belonged there, humming softly, checking on Noah, folding small blankets with the precision of care. When Elliot entered the nursery, she smiled faintly. "Good morning, Mr. Crawford. He's been laughing since sunrise. I think he knows you're awake." Elliot tried to smile, but his mind was elsewhere. "Monica," he said carefully, "you mentioned you've seen something like this before. What did you mean?" She froze, not in guilt, but in memory. Her voice softened. "A child I cared for once, years ago. His name was Mason. He was declared blind, too. The diagnosis was wrong, or made to be wrong." Elliot's gaze sharpened. "Made to be?" She nodded slowly. His parents were wealthy. They trusted a specialist who manipulated test results, for research funding, for attention, for reasons that never made sense to anyone but him. By the time they found out, the damage wasn't just medical. It was emotional. The boy started believing he wasn't meant to see. She hesitated, then whispered, "That doctor's name was Samuel Avery." Elliot's heart stopped. The same man who treated Noah. Monica met his eyes. "I didn't know until I saw the file in your study yesterday. I recognized the handwriting." Silence filled the room like thunder before a storm. Elliot turned away, running his hand through his hair, pacing. "He told me Noah had no visual response. He said Claire insisted we stop treatment, that continuing could cause brain damage." Monica's expression darkened. "Claire didn't strike me as the kind of woman who gave up." He looked up sharply. "You knew my wife?" Monica froze, realizing her slip. "No, sir. I just meant, from what I've heard." But her voice betrayed something, a tone too personal, too tender. Elliot narrowed his eyes, filing the thought away. He glanced toward the window where sunlight spilled over the crib. If Dr. Avery lied, there has to be proof. Monica stepped closer, her voice calm but urgent. "I can find it," he frowned. "How?" She smiled faintly. "Because some truths don't hide in hospitals. They hide in hearts that can't rest until they're free." That afternoon, while Elliot attended a virtual board meeting, Monica visited the local clinic where Noah's early checkups had been filed. The nurse on duty, Patricia Gomez, looked startled when she mentioned the Crawford name. "I'm sorry," Patricia said, glancing around nervously. "All those records were transferred to Dr. Avery's private archive in Boston. We weren't supposed to keep copies." Monica leaned closer. "You saw the tests, didn't you? Was there anything strange?" The nurse hesitated, her eyes flicking toward the empty hallway. "Off the record, the results didn't match the child's responses. But Dr. Avery said it was a complex neurological condition. We weren't allowed to question it." Monica's pulse quickened. "Did you sign anything?" Patricia nodded slowly. "A non-disclosure. Everyone did, but..." She reached into her drawer and slid a faded photograph across the counter. "This was from his first visit. Look at his eyes. Tell me if that looks like blindness to you." Monica stared at the photo. Baby Noah, barely a week old, his eyes catching a sliver of light from the window, pupils contracting perfectly. Her throat tightened. She whispered, "Oh God." He could see. That night, Monica returned home to find Elliot in the study again, the letter from Claire still on the desk. She placed the photo beside it. "You were right to trust your instinct," she said quietly. Dr. Avery's report was false. Elliot looked from the picture to her face, then back again. "Why would he do this?" Monica hesitated. "Sometimes the powerful hide their failures. Sometimes they hide something worse." He stared at her. "For you sound like you know." She met his gaze, unflinching. "Because I've seen what happens when people like him think they can play God with other people's children." For the first time, Elliot saw the truth. Monica wasn't just a nanny. She was a woman who had walked through her own private war and survived. And she wasn't here by coincidence. Outside, the wind howled against the tall glass windows, and thunder rolled over the Atlantic. Elliot turned the photograph over and found, faintly written in pencil, the date and signature Dr. Samuel Avery, 6/14, the same date Claire had been rushed to the hospital. A chill ran through him. Something about his wife's death and his son's diagnosis were connected. He looked at Monica. "You're not leaving this alone, are you?" She shook her head slowly. "Not until we both know why your son was meant to live in darkness." And in that moment, Elliot realized this woman, this stranger who had walked into his house 3 days ago, might be the only person capable of bringing the truth into the light. The next morning, rain soaked the coastline, painting the Crawford mansion in silver. Elliot stood by the window in his robe, phone pressed to his ear, his reflection fractured in the glass. "This is Dr. Avery's office," a clipped voice answered after 3 rings. "I need to speak with him." "Elliot Crawford," he said, steady but sharp. "I'm sorry, sir. The doctor is unavailable. He's traveling abroad for a medical conference." "Where?" "Prague." "Then connect me there." "I'm afraid that won't be possible." The line clicked dead. Elliot's jaw tightened. Traveling abroad, the classic phrase used when someone didn't want to be found. He stared at his phone, then at the letter on his desk. His late wife's words echoed, "Protect Noah, trust the light." He turned as Monica entered quietly with a tray of coffee. She had that calm energy that seemed to balance out the storm brewing inside him. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. "Neither did you," he replied. She smiled faintly. "Guilty," He took a long breath. He's hiding. The doctor. He won't take my calls. Then we find him ourselves, Monica said simply. We have enough to start. Elliot studied her face, her certainty, her quiet fire. You talk like someone used to chasing ghosts. She looked down, her voice steady. Because I am. That afternoon they drove into town. The streets of Newport glistened from the rain, the ocean wind carrying salt through every crack of the old buildings. Monica led him to a small clinic, tucked behind a florist's shop. Inside, the nurse Patricia was waiting, nervous but resolved. I shouldn't even be talking to you, she whispered. But when I saw that baby's picture, I couldn't stop thinking about it. There's something else you should see. She handed Monica a manila folder wrapped in plastic. Inside were copies of forms with Avery's signature, 2 sets of test results dated the same day. One labeled preliminary vision response normal, the other final report congenital blindness. Elliot's throat dried. He changed the results, Patricia nodded, and billed double for a private neurological adjustment procedure, whatever that means. But there's one more thing. She slid a page forward, an insurance authorization signed not by Elliot but by Vivian Crawford. Elliot froze. My sister? Patricia swallowed hard. She authorized the charge while your wife was in critical condition. I thought you knew. He stepped back, pulse hammering. Vivian said she handled the paperwork that week, told me I was too emotional. Monica placed a hand on his arm. Elliot, this wasn't just medical fraud. Someone wanted your son labeled blind. Elliot's eyes darkened. But why? Patricia shook her head. I don't know, sir. But Dr. Avery received a large private deposit right after that, through one of your company's charity accounts. A silence heavy enough to break bone filled the room. Elliot realized he wasn't just fighting a dishonest doctor. He might be standing in the shadow of his own family's betrayal. Back at the mansion, the storm outside intensified. Thunder rolled as Elliot confronted his sister in the study. Vivian, wrapped in a cream cashmere shawl, looked up from her tablet with a smirk that never reached her eyes. What's wrong now, Elliot? You look like you've seen a ghost. He threw the documents onto the table. You signed medical papers in my name while Claire was dying. Her expression didn't waver. I handled things because you couldn't. You were drowning in grief. Someone had to keep the company and this family together. By lying to me, Vivian's smile vanished. That child's condition was a tragedy, but I did what was necessary. Do you have any idea what it would do to our reputation if the press found out you had a special needs heir? Elliot's voice broke with fury. He's not a burden, Vivian. He's my son. Her tone sharpened. He's a liability. Investors don't like unstable bloodlines. I protected what you built. Monica, who had quietly entered behind him, gasped. You chose to blind him on paper, so the world wouldn't see him as imperfect. Vivian turned cold eyes toward her. Stay in your place, Miss Whitmore. You're paid to keep the house in order, not to psychoanalyze the family. Elliot's hand slammed the table. Enough. You manipulated a doctor, falsified medical records, and turned my son's life into a corporate cover-up. Do you hear yourself? Vivian stood, her composure cracking. I did what you were too weak to do. The thunder outside exploded, rattling the windows. For a moment, no one spoke. Then quietly, Elliot said, Get out. Vivian blinked. For you can't mean, leave my house, he said again, his voice firm and low. You lost your right to call it family the day you traded compassion for control. Vivian's jaw trembled, her mask slipping just enough to show a flicker of regret, but pride won, as it always did. She straightened her shawl and walked out without another word. Hours later, Elliot sat alone in the nursery. Noah stirred softly, clutching the small blue rattle Monica had bought him. The storm outside began to calm. Monica entered quietly, carrying a blanket. You did the right thing, she said softly. Elliot's eyes stayed on the baby. Vivian and I built the company together. She was there when Claire died. I thought I could at least trust her. Monica knelt beside the crib. Sometimes betrayal isn't about money or power. It's about fear. People like your sister, they fear what love looks like when it isn't perfect. He looked at her then, studying her calmness, her empathy. You talk like you've lived this. She hesitated, then whispered, Because I have. That night, when the lights dimmed and silence filled the hallways, Monica stood by the nursery window, watching the clouds break open to reveal a sliver of moonlight. Her hand trembled slightly as she touched the cross pendant around her neck. She whispered to herself, "Not again. Not this time." Because long before she ever stepped into the Crawford mansion, there had been another child, another lie, another doctor named Samuel Avery, and the truth she had buried was about to rise with the dawn. The storm outside had passed. But inside the Crawford mansion, something far darker was stirring. Elliot lay awake that night, his thoughts chasing every word that had left Vivian's mouth. "He's a liability." The sentence clung to him like smoke, haunting him even as he sat by Noah's crib, watching his son breathe. In the faint glow of the baby monitor, he could see Monica standing by the window, her arms folded, her gaze lost in the Atlantic horizon. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Elliot broke the silence. "You said you've seen something like this before, with Dr. Avery, with another child. Tell me what happened." Monica's hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "It was 6 years ago. I was working as a pediatric nurse in Virginia. There was a boy named Mason Harper, 3 years old. Bright, healthy, full of energy. His mother was one of my closest friends." She paused, eyes distant. "One day, she brought him in for a routine checkup. Dr. Avery was leading a new pediatric study on genetic disorders. He told her Mason had a rare degenerative condition that would take his sight within months. He promised an experimental treatment, said it could delay the blindness, maybe even reverse it. She agreed. Monica's jaw clenched. 2 weeks later, Mason was in a coma. The drug he used wasn't approved for children. Avery disappeared before we could question him. The hospital buried the report. My friend lost her mind, and then she lost her life." Elliot's breath caught. "You're saying he experimented on her child?" She nodded. "And she trusted him, just like your wife did." A silence heavy as lead settled over the room. Elliot rubbed his temples, his pulse pounding with disbelief and fury. "How does a man like that keep practicing?" "Because men like that have friends in high places," Monica said quietly. "He works with pharmaceutical donors, research grants, people who see children as numbers on a chart." Elliot leaned forward, his voice low and sharp. "Then we'll expose him." Monica met his gaze. "You'll need proof stronger than outrage, Elliot. You're fighting a man who knows how to erase his own sins." He nodded slowly. "Then we'll find what he couldn't erase." The next morning, Monica made a call. Her voice was calm, her tone professional. "Detective Reynolds? It's Monica Whitmore. I need a favor." Quietly, Detective James Reynolds had been her late friend's brother, the only person who had ever believed Mason's case was more than an accident. He owed her a debt of trust, and she was calling it in. Within hours, a brown envelope arrived at the Crawford estate. Inside, photocopies, reports, and a name scrawled in black ink. Vivian Crawford, listed as one of Dr. Avery's private research sponsors. Elliot's world tilted. "My sister funded him?" Monica nodded grimly. "She didn't just sign a few papers. She paid for his work." He stared at the documents, disbelief melting into rage. "She knew," he whispered. "She knew exactly what he was doing." Monica's hand found his shoulder, firm and grounding. "You can't go to the press yet. Not without solid proof. Avery's people will destroy the evidence, and your sister will spin it as charity work." Elliot turned to her, eyes fierce. "Then what do we do?" Monica hesitated, then said softly, "We follow the money." That night, while Noah slept, they searched through Vivian's home office, a sleek corner suite inside the guest house on the property. Elliot had access to everything. Still, the act of unlocking his sister's safe felt like treason. Inside were folders, checks, and a small silver flash drive, labeled simply, "Research, Private." Elliot plugged it into his laptop. Dozens of files appeared, clinical reports, payment transfers, and then videos. The first one opened with Dr. Avery standing before a camera, speaking coldly into a microphone. Case 14A. Crawford, Noah, infant, 6 months old. Patient demonstrates strong neurological response to stimulus. Recommend Phase 2 initiation. Monica's hand flew to her mouth. "Phase 2? That's..." He clicked another file. The next video showed a medical room. Claire, pale and exhausted after childbirth, holding Noah in her arms. Dr. Avery stood beside her, his tone detached. "Mrs. Crawford, we believe your son's condition is irreversible. The optic nerve shows minimal activity." Claire's voice was faint. but he looks at me when I speak. Reflex, the doctor said coldly. It doesn't mean he can see. The screen flickered and the sound cut off. The file ended abruptly. Elliot sat frozen, his hands shaking. She didn't believe him, he whispered. She knew something was wrong. And Vivian made sure I never saw this. Monica's eyes filled with tears. She trusted the wrong people. Just like I did. Elliot turned toward her. You don't have to do this, Monica. You've already done more than I could ever ask. But she shook her head. This isn't just your fight anymore, Elliot. This man has destroyed too many lives. Mason, your wife, your son. He's been hiding behind science long enough. Elliot's voice hardened. Then we bring him into the light. The next morning they drove to Boston. The storm had cleared, leaving behind a clean, cruel brightness. The Crawford limousine cut through the highway like a silent vow. Elliot's phone rang halfway there. The number was unknown. He answered. Mr. Crawford, a low voice said. This is Dr. Avery. I think it's time we talk. Elliot's stomach tightened. Where are you? Let's just say, not as far as you think. And if you care about your son, I suggest you stop digging. The line went dead. Monica looked over, her expression sharp. He knows. Elliot's grip tightened on the wheel. Then he's afraid. By the time they reached Boston, the sun had set. The address from the clinic led them to an old research facility near Cambridge, half abandoned but still guarded. Monica felt her heart race as they approached the locked gate. You sure about this? She asked. He wanted to meet, Elliot said, stepping forward. Let's give him what he wants. Inside the building, shadows swallowed the walls. And waiting by the elevator, under the sick glow of a flickering light, stood Dr. Samuel Avery. His smile was cold. You should have left the past where it belongs, he said. But some people just can't stop chasing ghosts. Monica stepped beside Elliot, her voice firm. Then tonight, Doctor, one of those ghosts is coming for you. The old research facility smelled of antiseptic and dust, a place where science and secrets shared the same walls. The flicker of dying fluorescent lights cast long, nervous shadows over the tiled floor. Elliot's heart pounded as he stepped forward, the sound of his shoes echoing down the corridor. Beside him, Monica's steady breathing kept him anchored. At the end of the hallway, under the weak glow of a flickering lamp, stood Dr. Samuel Avery. Tall, thin, his hair streaked with grey, his white coat immaculate. He looked almost amused to see them. You should have stayed home, Mr. Crawford, he said, his tone calm but carrying a blade underneath. Some things are better left unseen. Elliot's voice was low, firm. You took that choice from my son. The doctor smiled, that polished kind of smile that belongs to men who have lied for so long they've forgotten how to mean anything. Your son was born into a world of power, Mr. Crawford. You don't understand how fragile the body can be when it's expected to carry a name like yours. Monica stepped closer, her voice cutting through his calm like glass. You didn't care about his name. You cared about your experiments, about the money Vivian Crawford paid you to keep her family's image clean. The doctor's eyes narrowed. Miss Whitmore, still playing nurse to lost causes. She flinched but didn't back away. You killed Mason Harper. You called it an accident. Avery's smirk faded. That boy's mother was unstable. She signed the consent forms. Monica's hands trembled with rage. She trusted you. Just like Claire Crawford did. Elliot slammed his fist on the metal counter beside him, the sound echoing through the empty building. You manipulated my wife when she was dying. You stole my son's future to protect a reputation that wasn't yours to guard. The doctor's composure cracked just slightly. You think this is about you? You were a signature, a bank account. Your wife wanted to save that child, but she didn't understand what we were doing. There was a chance, a 50% chance, to improve his sight. But the board refused to approve the study. So yes, he said, stepping closer, his voice lowering to a hiss. I did what I had to do. Monica stared at him, horrified. You used him like a test subject. Avery gave a small shrug. He lived. I consider that success. Elliot's voice was barely a whisper. And the others? Avery's eyes flicked to Monica. Some weren't as fortunate. Monica's face went pale. For a brief moment, she saw Mason's tiny hands again reaching for light that never came. You've built your career on graves, she said softly. The doctor turned toward her. You of all people should know that progress requires sacrifice. She took a step forward, trembling but resolute. "No, doctor. That's what monsters say when they've forgotten how to be human." Elliot reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. "This conversation's being recorded," he said. "Every word." Avery froze, then smiled thinly. "You're bluffing." Monica met his gaze. "Try us." For the first time, a shadow of unease crossed the doctor's face. He moved quickly, turning toward the door, but Elliot blocked his way. "You're not leaving until you tell me everything." The doctor's mask slipped completely. His voice turned sharp, desperate. "You don't understand what you're playing with. There are investors, companies, people who would destroy both of you if this comes out." Elliot's eyes were steady. "They already destroyed enough." The air between them tightened. Then Avery lunged, not for them, but for the laptop sitting on a nearby table. In a split second he grabbed it, trying to smash it to the ground. Monica moved first. She stepped forward, catching his arm mid-swing, the impact sending pain shooting up her wrist, but she didn't let go. "You don't get to erase another life," she shouted. The laptop clattered to the floor but remained intact. Elliot rushed in, grabbing Avery by the shoulder, his fury erupting after months of silence. "You lied to me, to my wife, to my son?" Avery shoved him back, shouting, "You have no idea what that boy is." The words hung in the air, strange and heavy. Elliot froze. "What do you mean?" The doctor's chest heaved. "Claire didn't tell you everything. The treatment she approved. It wasn't just experimental. It was genetic." Monica's eyes widened. "You altered his DNA?" The doctor didn't answer, but his silence was enough. Elliot took a step closer, disbelief turning to horror. "You changed my son," Avery sneered. "Enhanced him. That child may grow up seeing more than you ever will." Monica's voice trembled. "You're talking about him like a project, not a person." He looked at her coldly. "Because that's what he was meant to be. The future." Elliot's voice broke through the tension, deep and final. "No, he's my son." Avery's lip curled in disgust. "Then you'd better protect him, Mr. Crawford, because if you don't, others will come for what he is." Before Elliot could react, the doctor pushed past them and ran toward the back corridor. Monica shouted his name, but by the time they reached the exit, Avery was gone, his car already tearing down the wet road, taillights fading into the storm. They stood in the rain, breathless, shaken, surrounded by echoes of truth too dark to carry. Elliot finally spoke, his voice low but determined. "He's not going to run forever. Not after what he's done." Monica met his gaze. "And if he's right? If they come for Noah?" Elliot looked out into the distance, where the headlights vanished into the night. His jaw tightened. "Then they'll find out what a father is willing to do to protect his child." The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the air still carried the taste of iron and fear. Elliot didn't sleep. He sat in the nursery all night, watching Noah's chest rise and fall, listening to the rhythm that reminded him that his son was real, alive, and no longer a mystery written by other people's lies. At sunrise, Monica entered quietly with 2 cups of coffee. Her eyes were red, her hair pulled back loosely, her presence soft but grounding. She placed the cup beside him without a word. For a while they just sat there, the silence between them saying everything words couldn't. Finally, Elliot broke it. He said they'll come for Noah, that others are involved. Monica nodded slowly. He wasn't lying. Men like Avery don't work alone. Someone paid for his research. Someone powerful. Elliot exhaled, his hands tightening around the mug. "Vivian." Monica hesitated. "Maybe her, maybe others. But the name Crawford carries a lot of shadows. Money attracts wolves, Elliot." He looked at her then, really looked. "Why do you know so much about how men like him think?" She swallowed, her voice trembling. "Because I used to work with them." Elliot frowned. "What do you mean?" Monica stood, walking toward the window where the morning light cut through the mist. "After Mason's death, I couldn't just move on. I joined a private medical research group that claimed to be investigating malpractice, but it was a cover. They were funded by the same donors that backed Avery. I thought I was helping expose him, but I was helping him bury the evidence. When I realized the truth, I leaked everything I could find. It cost me my license, and nearly my life." Elliot stared, stunned. "You risked everything." She turned, eyes glistening. "Because someone has to. I couldn't save Mason, but I can save Noah." Later that day, Elliot met with his attorney in secret. They needed leverage, something that could protect Noah and corner Avery. The flash drive they had stolen from the lab contained proof of falsified records, genetic data, and experimental funding trails that tied directly to Vivian's foundation. If we release this, the lawyer warned, Vivian will be ruined, and so will your company's public image. Investors will panic, Elliot's jaw tightened. Then let them. The truth is worth more than any stock price. Meanwhile, Monica noticed something strange with Noah. He was sitting in his crib, facing the light, eyes open, pupils reacting perfectly. But there was something else. His gaze didn't just follow the light. It seemed to anticipate it, as if he sensed brightness before it touched him. She moved her hand slowly between him and the window. Before her shadow reached him, he giggled, already turning toward her. Her heart raced. "Oh my God," she whispered. Elliot entered, hearing her gasp. "What is it?" She turned, barely able to speak. "He's not just seeing, Elliot. He's feeling light, like his body remembers it before it arrives." He blinked, unsure what to make of it. "You mean—" "I mean whatever Avery did to him, it changed him, but not the way he intended." Elliot approached the crib, kneeling beside his son. "He's not a mistake," he said softly. "He's a miracle." Monica smiled, tears filling her eyes. "Exactly." The doctor tried to play God, but God wrote the last line himself. For the first time, Elliot smiled too. It was faint, uncertain, fun, but real. That peace lasted only until his phone buzzed. A message. No name, just a single sentence. "You can't protect what you don't understand." Attached was a photo of Avery, lying on a gurney in a Boston hospital unconscious. Below it, a message time-stamped less than an hour ago. "He's gone." Elliot stared at the screen, stunned. They silenced him. Monica's blood ran cold. Whoever he worked for. Their cleaning house. Elliot rose, pacing the room. "Then they'll come for us next." Monica's voice was calm, but her eyes were filled with fear. "Not if we move first." That night, the mansion felt like a fortress. Elliot instructed his staff to leave, claiming renovations. Only Monica stayed. The housekeeper, Martha, had already gone to visit family in Connecticut. The silence was deafening. Only the waves outside reminded them that time was still moving. They worked through the night, encrypting files, backing up evidence, preparing a press release that would detonate like a bomb in every major outlet the next morning. But just after 2 a.m., Monica heard it, the faint crunch of gravel outside. She froze. "Elliot!" He looked up, instantly alert. Outside, a car had stopped by the gate. Headlights off. Then another. And another. Elliot reached for his phone. "Security cameras are down." Monica moved quickly, lifting Noah from his crib. "They're here." Elliot's voice was steady, but his eyes burned with fire. "Go to the back exit. Take him. I'm not leaving you. You have to," he insisted. "If they want me, fine. But they don't touch him." Monica held Noah tight, shaking her head. "You're not dying for this." "Not again." He stepped closer, placing a hand on her cheek, the first time he'd ever touched her like that. "If anything happens to me, promise you'll tell him the truth. That he wasn't born blind. That he was born special." Her lips trembled. "Don't say that." The sound of boots crunching closer echoed through the night. "Go, Monica." She turned and ran through the back hallway, clutching the child against her chest. Her heartbeat drowned out the world, until she heard the door burst open behind her. Voices, men shouting. Elliot's voice booming through the hall. "You want me? Leave them out of this." Then a gunshot. The scream that followed didn't sound human. It sounded like grief torn open. Monica froze, her body shaking, her mind screaming to keep moving. She ran through the kitchen, out the service door, into the cold rain, and into the night. Miles away, as the mansion lights flashed with sirens, she held Noah close in the back seat of an old sedan, her tears mixing with the storm. She whispered into the boy's ear, voice trembling, "You'll see the world one day. Noah, I promise you'll see everything your father died to protect." But as the headlights disappeared into the distance, Monica didn't know that Elliot Crawford wasn't dead. He was still inside the mansion, bleeding, breathing and holding one last truth that would change everything. The sirens faded into the night, but inside the Crawford mansion, the world hadn't stopped burning. The once pristine living room was now a ruin, shattered glass, broken furniture, blood smeared across marble. And among the wreckage, Elliot Crawford opened his eyes. Pain throbbed in his side where the bullet had torn through, but it had missed his heart. He pressed his hand against the wound, forcing himself to breathe. The metallic taste of blood filled his mouth, but the sound that followed kept him conscious, a child's laughter echoing in his memory. Noah. He dragged himself across the floor, every movement agony, until his hand brushed against his phone. It was shattered, but the voice assistant still flickered to life. "Call Monica Whitmore," he gasped. Static. No signal. The system was dead. He cursed under his breath, forcing himself upright by clinging to the side of a cabinet. His reflection in the cracked mirror was unrecognizable, pale, drenched in sweat, eyes burning with fury and loss. Through the haze of pain, he saw something glimmering on the floor, a bullet casing engraved with a symbol, a black serpent coiled around a star. It wasn't random. It was a mark he'd seen once before, in one of the offshore company documents linked to Vivian's foundation. "You did this," he muttered, his voice a mixture of disbelief and rage. He stumbled toward his office, leaving a trail of blood. On the desk lay the flash drive. He plugged it into the laptop again, his hands trembling. The files loaded slowly, one by one. Hidden among the folders was one he hadn't noticed before. Project Lumen. He clicked it. A series of encrypted reports filled the screen, stamped with the same serpent emblem. Then he found a note, a personal memo addressed to Vivian Crawford. Subject number 14A shows heightened sensory cognition and early-stage neurological adaptation. The gene mapping is complete. The board authorizes next phase testing upon confirmation of subject's survival. Maintain cover story until further notice. Elliot's throat tightened. Next phase testing. It wasn't about curing blindness. It was about creating evolution. He realized now Noah wasn't supposed to be cured. He was supposed to be the prototype, and Vivian knew it. Meanwhile, miles away, Monica drove through winding coastal roads, headlights cutting through fog. Noah slept in her arms, bundled in a blanket, peaceful despite everything. Her hands shook around the steering wheel. Her mind kept replaying the sound of the gunshot, the moment her world had cracked open. She'd lost people before. But Elliot wasn't just another casualty. He was proof that goodness could still exist in a world full of monsters. She whispered through her tears, "I won't let them win." Not again. She reached a small isolated cabin she'd rented under a fake name weeks earlier, just in case. There she laid Noah on a bed, locking every door, checking every window twice. She sat beside him and looked at the pendant around her neck, a small silver cross. She remembered the last thing she'd said to God years ago, "If you're real, stop taking everything from me." But tonight, for the first time, she prayed again. "Please, don't take him." Back at the mansion, the storm returned. Elliot staggered through the corridors, his breath ragged. He reached his study and dialed a secure number. "Reynolds," came the voice on the other end. "Detective," Elliot coughed. "Avery's dead. Vivian's involved." "I have proof." "Slow down, Elliot. Where are you?" "Home, but not for long." He sent the files through an encrypted link before collapsing onto the couch. His vision blurred, but he forced himself to stay awake. He thought of Noah, of Monica's determination, her kindness, the way she'd risked everything without hesitation. She was more than a nanny now. She was his only chance at redemption. "Protect him, Monica," he whispered before everything went black. Hours later, the door creaked open. A woman's heels echoed against the marble floor. The sound was deliberate, confident. Vivian Crawford stepped inside, her expression unreadable beneath the brim of her black hat. She scanned the room, her gaze landing on Elliot's unconscious body. "You should have stayed out of this, brother," she murmured, kneeling beside him. "Now you're forcing me to clean up your mess." She reached into her coat and pulled out a vial, a clear liquid glinting under the dim light. She looked at it for a long moment before sighing. "I warned you," she whispered, her tone colder than the rain outside. "Family is business, and business can't afford weakness." She was about to inject the syringe when a beam of blue and red light flashed through the windows, police sirens. Vivian froze. Elliot's phone, still connected, had transmitted their conversation live to Reynolds' secure channel. "Vivian Crawford," a voice shouted from outside. "Step away from him!" Her eyes widened, fury, disbelief, panic. She dropped the syringe, slipping through the back entrance before officers burst through the door. They found Elliot barely breathing, but alive. As they loaded him onto a stretcher, one officer asked, "Who did this to you?" Elliot managed to whisper, "My sister, and something bigger." Then he passed out again. By morning, news spread across major outlets. Crawford Pharmaceuticals under investigation for illegal genetic trials. CEO's sister implicated in medical scandal, but none of it mentioned what really mattered. The boy, Noah Crawford. The child who wasn't supposed to see. The child who might one day change everything. At the cabin, Monica saw the headlines and felt a bittersweet wave of relief. But deep inside, she knew it wasn't over. As she looked down at Noah, who was now awake and staring at her, really staring, she realized his eyes were no longer the pale gray of blindness. They were vibrant blue, glowing faintly in the dawn light. She gasped, tears running down her cheeks. "Elliot, you were right." The baby smiled, reaching for her face, his tiny fingers brushing away her tears, and for the first time, Monica saw not just light in his eyes, but intelligence, awareness, something new, something the world wasn't ready for. 3 weeks passed. The world outside was still spinning with scandal, lawsuits, and headlines, but inside a small hospital in Boston, time moved differently. Elliot Crawford lay in a private recovery room, pale but alive, his body stitched together by chance and willpower. A steady hum of machines filled the silence, punctuated by the rhythmic beep of his heart monitor. Detective James Reynolds stood by the window, flipping through a file. "You're lucky, Crawford. That bullet missed your heart by a whisper. Most people don't get that kind of grace." Elliot's voice was rough. "Grace has a name. Her name's Monica." The detective smirked slightly. "The nanny? She saved your son and disappeared off the grid. I've got agents looking, but she's a ghost. She knew what she was doing." Elliot closed his eyes. "Good, that means they won't find her." Reynolds' tone softened. "Vivian's facing a federal indictment. Fraud, medical conspiracy, attempted manslaughter. But we both know she wasn't acting alone." Elliot turned his gaze to the window, where the city lights glimmered like scattered stars. "She never did anything alone. Crawford Pharmaceuticals has investors, powerful ones. And now that Avery's dead, they'll want to erase every trace of Project Lumen." Reynolds stepped closer. "Then we make sure they can't. You've got the proof. You're still the CEO. Use that power." Elliot gave a faint, weary smile. "Power built on lies isn't power at all. It's a curse." Meanwhile, in the cabin by the sea, Monica Whitmore sat beside the fireplace, watching Noah play with wooden blocks. The boy was radiant, his laughter pure, his movements confident. He turned his head to follow her voice, but it wasn't like before. His eyes tracked everything, bright and alert, as if the darkness that once surrounded him had been banished forever. But Monica couldn't shake the unease that clung to her. There was something different about him now. Sometimes when a light flickered, Noah would tilt his head before it happened, as if he could sense electricity. "Anticipate sound, feel emotion in the air," she whispered to herself. "What did they do to you, sweetheart?" Then, as if answering her, Noah giggled and pointed at the small cross pendant around her neck. He reached for it, his hand trembling slightly, his eyes locked on hers. For a split second, the room filled with warmth, a strange, soft glow that didn't come from the fire. Monica froze. "Noah." The glow faded, but the air still buzzed faintly. Her heart raced. "Oh my God!" She picked up her phone, no signal. She hadn't called anyone in weeks, it was too dangerous, but now she had no choice. She needed to tell Elliot that his son wasn't just healing. He was changing. That same night in his hospital room, Elliot woke with a start. His heart monitor flatlined for a second, then spiked again. He sat up, gasping, gripping the sheets. He felt something sharp, like a surge of energy in his chest. The nurse rushed in. "Mr. Crawford? Are you all right?" He blinked. The machines were normal again, but his reflection in the window caught his attention. His pupils had dilated completely, reflecting the faintest shimmer of blue light. He whispered, "Noah." 2 days later, Monica's old phone buzzed for the first time since she fled. The message came through an encrypted channel. Only one person could have sent it. From Elliot Crawford. Message, "I'm alive. I need to see you, both of you. There's more you need to know." Tears filled her eyes. She packed Noah's things, whispering, "We're going home, baby." She drove through the night, heart pounding with both relief and fear. But when she reached the hospital, Elliot wasn't in his room. The nurse told her he had checked himself out hours earlier. No forwarding information, no escort. Monica's stomach dropped. She turned, and there he was, standing by the window at the end of the corridor. His face was pale, his expression unreadable. But his eyes glowed faintly blue in the flickering light. Her breath caught. "Elliot?" He smiled faintly, stepping closer. "How you found me?" She froze, clutching Noah protectively. "What's happening to you?" He stopped a few feet away, his voice low and calm. "Whatever Avery did to my son, he did to me too." Monica shook her head. "No, that's impossible." "I thought so too," he said, lifting his hand slightly. "But ever since that night I can feel him, Noah, even when he's not near, like we're connected somehow." Monica looked down at the baby, who was now staring directly at Elliot, smiling as if he recognized something deep inside him. Elliot's voice trembled. "He's not blind anymore, is he?" She shook her head. "No, but it's more than that. He sees things before they happen. He feels light. Elliot, this isn't natural." He nodded slowly. "It's not a defect. It's evolution. Avery called it neurological adaptation, but I think it's something else, something divine. A curse turned into grace." Monica's eyes welled up. "And what about you? What did it do to you?" He looked down at his hands. "It's like I can sense truth. When people lie, when something's wrong, it's overwhelming. But maybe this is why I survived, to protect him." Before she could answer, the hallway lights flickered. The intercom crackled to life. Security alert. Unauthorized personnel in the East Wing. Elliot's expression hardened. "They found us." Monica grabbed Noah, her heart pounding. "What do we do?" Elliot looked down the corridor, determination flooding back into his veins. "We finish what they started. We expose everything." He reached for her hand. "But no matter what happens, promise me you'll protect him." She nodded. "With my life." They turned toward the exit, moving fast through the emergency stairwell. But before they reached the bottom, the door swung open. 2 men in black suits blocking their path. Elliot stepped in front of Monica, voice firm. "You'll have to go through me." One of the men smirked. "We're not here to kill you, Mr. Crawford. We're here to bring the boy home." Elliot's blood turned cold. "He is home." The man's expression didn't change. Project Lumen wasn't just about curing blindness. It was about awakening potential. "Your son is the first success." Monica's arms tightened around Noah. "He's not your experiment." Elliot lunged forward before the man could react, tackling him against the wall. The second agent raised a weapon, but as he did, the corridor lights exploded in a burst of blue-white light. The shockwave sent everyone crashing to the floor. When the smoke cleared, Elliot looked up and saw Noah staring at his own hands, small sparks of energy fading from his fingertips. Monica gasped. "Elliot, he did that." Elliot's voice broke with awe. "My God." The child smiled, innocent, unknowing, while the agents scrambled away in terror. Elliot stood, lifting Noah gently from Monica's arms. "They wanted to create perfection," he whispered. "But they created hope." Outside, alarms wailed and police cars gathered around the building. But inside that stairwell, time felt suspended. Just a father, a mother figure, and a child who had defied every law of science and sin. Elliot looked at Monica, a tear rolling down his cheek. "This ends now. No more lies, no more secrets." Monica nodded, her voice trembling. "Then let's show them what the truth looks like." Dawn crept across the horizon like a promise reborn. The chaos of the night was over, but the world had changed forever. Helicopters hovered above the Boston Medical Research Center, their rotors slicing through the morning air. Reporters shouted questions over one another, flashes erupting like lightning. Somewhere within that chaos, 3 souls stood on the rooftop. Elliot Crawford, pale and resolute. Monica Whitmore, exhausted but unbroken. And little Noah in her arms, calm as if he already understood the gravity of this day. Below them, the truth they had fought to uncover was spreading across every screen in America. Breaking news. Crawford Industries exposed secret human. Genetic trials uncovered. Leaked recordings reveal CEO's sister. Involvement in illegal medical experiments. The video of Dr. Avery's final confession, the one Elliot had recorded before the chaos, was playing on every network. His cold clinical voice admitted what no one wanted to believe. Project Lumen was never about curing blindness. It was about reprogramming perception itself. We sought to create the next evolution of the human mind. By starting with the innocent, the nation was in uproar. The scientific world was in disbelief. But for Elliot and Monica, this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about redemption. Elliot watched the city skyline, the rising sun glinting off the glass towers that bore his family's name. "I built an empire of light," he murmured, "but it took losing everything to finally see." Monica placed a hand on his arm. "You didn't lose everything. You found what really matters." He turned toward her, his eyes, still faintly touched with blue, filled with something softer now. "I found faith again. Not in science, not in control, in grace." Monica smiled, her voice trembling. "That's what I found the day I met your son." They stood there for a long moment, silence wrapping around them like a prayer. Then Elliot whispered, "They'll come for him again." "I know," she said. "But this time they won't win, because the truth is out there now, and the world is watching." Elliot nodded, determination returning to his face. "Then we protect him not by hiding, but by showing the world who he is." He stepped forward, addressing the cameras that hovered from above, his voice strong and clear through the microphones below. "My name is Elliot Crawford. My company betrayed science, faith, and humanity. We tried to play God, and in doing so we created something far greater than we deserved. A child who proves that miracles are real. His name is Noah. He is not a project. He is not an experiment. He is my son." The crowd below erupted, some in disbelief, others in awe. "If you see this, know that what they called an accident was a revelation. The human spirit cannot be modified, bought, or erased, and no amount of fear will ever stop the truth." His voice cracked slightly, but he didn't stop. "I don't ask for forgiveness, only for understanding, because sometimes what begins as a curse ends as grace." That evening, back at the cabin by the sea, the world felt still again. Monica sat on the porch with Noah asleep in her lap, the ocean whispering its eternal song. Elliot walked out, wearing a simple sweater instead of a suit for the first time in years. He handed her a warm mug of tea. "We could disappear," she said quietly. "Start over somewhere no one knows the name Crawford." He smiled faintly. "Maybe one day, but not yet. The truth doesn't need to hide anymore. It needs to heal." Monica looked up at him, eyes shining. "And you? Have you forgiven yourself?" Elliot hesitated. "Not yet. But when I look at him..." He glanced at the child sleeping in her arms. "Maybe one day I will," Monica whispered. "He'll need both of us." He nodded. "He already has you." She looked away, blushing faintly. "We both have each other, Elliot. That's what faith looks like." For a long time they just watched the waves. The sun began to sink, painting the world in gold and violet. Then, as the first stars appeared, Noah stirred. His small hand lifted toward the sky, his eyes opening slowly, bright, blue, and alive. And then it happened again. The faint golden shimmer that had once frightened Monica now radiated softly around the boy, like sunlight trapped in human form. Elliot stared, breathless. "He's doing it again." Monica smiled through her tears. "No, he's showing us." The glow spread for just a moment, gentle, peaceful, before fading into the dusk. It wasn't power. It wasn't mutation. It was light, pure and uncorrupted. The world would never understand what happened that night. Some would call it science. Others would call it a miracle. But for Elliot and Monica, it didn't matter. What mattered was that one man's search for control had led him to faith, and one woman's pain had found purpose. And in the center of it all, a child who was never supposed to see became the one who taught them all to believe again. Elliot's voice closed the story as the screen faded to black. Some miracles aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be witnessed. And sometimes, the light we're searching for has been within us all along. I'm John Parker, and this was Invisible Hearts. If this story touched you, give it a like and share it with someone who still believes in miracles. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? Because maybe, just maybe, light travels farther than we think.